I'm very honored and pleased to be here this morning and to see you all. I was asked to talk about the Japanese-Canadian redress settlement as a kind of template for reconciliation. And I looked up what reconciliation meant in the dictionary, and it says the reestablishment of respectful relations. And I thought about that in terms of our community. Certainly the redress settlement in 1988 restored honor to our community, and the festering wound that had been there for decades had been lanced and hopefully healing. So in terms of a template, I thought I would set out the 5 components of our settlement and then do a kind of evaluation of how that was. In 1988, when Prime Minister Mulroney apologized to our community and signed the agreement with the NAJC, there was an acknowledgement of wrong, which was the apology, individual compensation of $21,000 to those who were affected. So that would have been from the end of 1941 to April of 1949, when my community got civil rights and citizenship rights. For example, my mom, who was born in Port Essington, which is across the river from Prince Rupert, and I, who was born before April 49, both of us were stateless because we were not considered Canadians. Third was a community fund of $12 million. Fourth was the repeal of the War Measures Act, which had made everything that happened to us completely legal. And fifth was the establishment of the Race Relations Foundation. Now, my evaluation of the components of our settlement, well, first of all, I think our community was very fortunate. We had a good organization that went across, that spanned the country. We managed to get consensus, although, of course, in any community there's dispute and divisions, but we did work very hard to kind of come to a consensus. And we had a very good leader of the National Association of Japanese Canadians, Art Miki. And so for 4 years, from 84 to 88, we were working away at building alliances and taking our message to the Canadian people. The apology, I think, was one of the good things that happened because we drafted the apology, so we were happy with it. And we blamed war hysteria, lack of political leadership, and racism. And I have to say, Chief Joseph, I'm very pleased to hear from you that the elders, deceased and living, and all the spirits seem to support reconciliation in your situation. Because I think in our situation, it was karma, good luck, all sorts of things that came together at that time. And if you can build that in to any reconciliation situation, more power to you. Secondly, the compensation. This was the first time when there had been a wrong done to a community in Canada that individuals were acknowledged and compensated. And we felt that was very important. That was one of the splits in our community about that issue. But we felt that it was very important because it was individuals who were affected. And the $21,000 per individual turned out to, it was a token sum, but it came out to about $400 million, which was what we had Price Waterhouse do a study of the property losses, and the property losses came to over $400 million. It didn't cover the personal losses, the internment for 5 years, the no ability to move, all that sort of stuff. But it was some amount of compensation. And what I think was good is that every person got the same amount. And I've heard about some of the traumas to people who are involved in the residential school settlement, having to relive and make out the case, and being in the legal business, making out a case of abuse and all that sort of stuff is very, in a sense, demeaning. And so I think it was easier for people to have one settlement sum for everyone. The community fund, because basically when you take a community and force them to scatter across the country or send them to Japan, you've destroyed that community. And so we got a $12 million community fund, which in those days must have been good interest, because it went up to $17 million with interest. And then through donations and matching funds and what have you, we ended up with over $80 million. And that has funded books, plays, community centers, seniors' homes, museums, all across the country. And that has been very important, because I consider us a dying community. And for example, I'm a Sansei, which means third generation. But the fifth generation, who are babies now, are only 1/4 Japanese ancestry. So I'm a racial minority in my own family now. But I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But getting those people, the Yonsei, the fourth and the fifth generation, to know about their roots requires us having this community fund, having community centers and museums. And pardon me. So I think that's a good thing. The repeal of legislation and the passing of legislation to prevent this kind of thing, we can't claim credit for that. Pardon me. The War Measures Act was repealed prior to 1988, and there's a new Emergency Powers Act, and it won't permit this kind of mass internment. Plus, having the Constitution in 1982 and the Charter of Rights in 1985 means that holus bolus, they can't sort of round up a group of people and incarcerate them. So I think that's an important thing. Oh, thank you very much. And this is on that memory through legislation and what have you, and I'll be very brief on this because I know time is ticking. But this has to do with the Americans after 9/11. And there was, the Secretary of Transportation was a Japanese American called Norm Mineta. And he had been in the White House when the towers were being bombed, and he was the one who stopped all air transport on that day. And there was a discussion that when President Bush came back to the White House, he wasn't there, in the bunker in the basement or something, about what they should do with the Muslims and Arab Americans. And there was some discussion, well, you should just do what you did with the Japanese Americans. And Norm Mineta had been interned himself at the age of 10 in Heart Mountain. And people around the table knew Norm's history. He's now 83, mind you. And Bush, to his credit, agreed that this is not the way they were going to go. They were going to not do racial profiling, but political profiling. Now, that can mean anything. You can politically profile an entire race or group into whatever you want. So that has to be, of course, monitored and controlled. The last thing I want to talk about is the Race Relations Foundation. That was what I hoped would be the crowning jewel in our redress settlement. And I have to say I'm extremely disappointed. We contributed $12 million to the creation of the Race Relations Foundation, and the government contributed $12 million. And we thought that this would be used by other groups across the country, such as Aboriginal groups, all peoples who had a grievance to bring it forward, because we were very small, we were poor, we had no money, and we were at that time the smallest ethnic minority in the country. So we wanted to have something robust that would help, but the Race Relations Foundation Act just made it a research arm, basically. And I have to say that was a failing on our part. We were not involved with the legislation, with the drafting of the Race Relations Foundation Act, and basically we really have no role in it to this day. And I would advise, if you get involved in this kind of situation, don't stop negotiating when you sort of get to base one, which is sort of what we did, and that was lack of expertise and what have you. But I think you have to keep on the government's case and keep bringing them back. But of course, when you're a weak little David against a Goliath, it's very hard to bring them back. Anyway, a few years ago, the federal government wanted to close the Race Relations Foundation because it is kind of useless, I think. I don't want to demean it terribly, but it's not what I had in mind. And so I was very pleased that the National Association said to the government, well, give us back our $12 million and we'll set up our own, because I think that would be a much better solution. Anyway, those are the terms of our settlement, and to any extent that it can be used as a template or a precedent by others. I hope you learn from our mistakes, and I wish all of you here who might be involved in these kinds of things the best of luck, and you can always count on our community to come and assist you however we can. Thank you.